Bishop.
And I'm Dr. Steph.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this YouTube channel. We call it Our Life, Our Journey.
Our truth.
We appreciate all of you every single week for being connected to this space, and we love bringing content that we believe can be a blessing to your life. Many of you let us know all around the world how this YouTube channel is blessing your life. So thank you in advance for that. And let me tell you, we appreciate you. Make sure you like, make sure you comment.
Make sure you share and subscribe.
Do that because we want to make sure you're a part of this community and share with other people. And make sure you follow Dr. Steph right there, Dr. Steph Walker. Follow me at Joseph Walker 3 on IG. And of course, you want our books, you want our content, you want our merch, which is really dope. Go check it out. We want you to make sure you get that. So go there, check it out, josephwalker3.org. I promise you, it will be a blessing to you. Now, let me tell you, I'm really excited about this topic because this is a big one, right? A lot of people have been talking to us personally about this.
Yeah, all week, all month, like all quarter, all year.
Yeah, like how do you transition in life? What are some of the things you should be aware of? And I'll lead out on this. You know, I many years ago wrote a book entitled Leader Shifts. And it wasn't just for leaders. It was just about how we shift in life and leadership and make healthy transitions. And so one of the things that I open the book up talking about is that shift happens. It really does. That it doesn't matter where you are in life, you're going to experience shifts. And you're going to have to learn how to navigate these transitions. And I think at the beginning of this, it's important to say that transitions aren't always bad. There's a lot that we can learn in transitions, and how you respond to those really speaks to your values, it speaks to your faith, it speaks to your vision, a variety of things. And so when you think about it, what are some of the things you're hearing people talk about?
I mean, there are people who are trying to figure out sort of what their next move is. You know, perhaps they're moving up the corporate ladder and they're feeling like there's more to what they want to do. Or perhaps they're in an amazing job and it's not that they don't like their job, but they feel God tugging at them to be able to use their gifts to do something else, and they're just not quite sure what that looks like. I mean, there's some people who, you know, are in certain situations and they're looking to be entrepreneurs and they're trying to figure out, like, how do I make that transition? There are other people who are, you know, moving away from divorce, or other people who are, you know, just making, you know, career moves across the country, or et cetera, like, or people who are trying to go back to school. Like, there's so many different kinds of shifts that happen in our lives, and they're all really important. They're all very different, but I feel like even no matter what kind of shift it is, the basics, the mechanics are still the same. Right?
I would agree with that. And I think one of the first things I would say that they're incredibly important is, and I talk about this in the book, that when a car makes a turn, you have to tap the brakes. If you don't tap the brakes, you're going to skid off the road. When you make a transition, it's important to tap the brakes, pause, reflect on where you've been and where you're going. You can't just run between different transitions as if though nothing happened. Something happened. Something pivoted.
Is happening.
Something is happening. And so as a part of that, you have to be very clear as you're making these shifts that you are paying attention to the importance of reflecting over lessons you've learned and things that you have gained as you move into this next space in life. Right?
I mean, I like to say, you know, because frequently shifts are filled with a lot of uncertainty, right? Like, you're not quite sure exactly how to move forward or what's next, or even if you know where you're going, you're still like moving into this unknown territory. And I would say that, you know, taking the pause and just getting really still and making sure that you are extraordinarily prayerful during this period. Whether it's journaling, whether it's just, doing meditation, going for regular walks, whatever that thing is that you do to just be able to get still and get centered so that you can hear from God. Because frequently during transitions, we have our own idea of what we want to do or what this means for us or where we're trying to go. But sometimes, and I truly believe that God has a sense of humor, sometimes I believe, and I feel like this has happened in my life and probably yours as well, like we think these transitions are things that we've created or things that we've made or things that we're going for. And frequently that's God opening a door that you didn't even know existed, right? Or giving you an opportunity that's deeper than the opportunity that you see in front of you. You might think that it's one thing, but it's really something else greater or grander than anything you could have possibly imagined. And so allowing him to really guide your steps, put things in order for you, really show you sort of the undercurrents, really show you what this all means relative to where you're coming from and how you're moving forward. And the only way that you're going to be able to hear from him, and I joke about this all the time, like we talk to God all the time. I talk to him in the shower, in the car, in the kitchen, when we're, taking the kids to school or, wherever, when you're getting quiet, what have you. But the only way that you're going to hear back from him and really truly hear his voice is if you get still and get quiet.
That's real.
Because there's so much noise around you. You're hearing from people, friends, mentors, all these other influences are coming your way, social media, TV, news. Until you get still and get quiet, his voice gets mixed in and you're confused frequently. And so you got to get still, you got to get quiet so you can hear his still, quiet voice with clarity and with peace and with, in no uncertain terms. When he speaks, you will know that it's him.
That's so true. That's so true. And I've been told that by mentors to make certain that you stay still long enough, that God can speak and his voice does come in that still small voice, and you have to remove the clutter and sometimes the influences of other people who are just like giving you their opinion or I think you should do this or do that. No, what is God saying in this transition? I think that's so important. So as you hit the brakes, as you pause, spend that time reflecting and being still and saying, God, show me with clarity, how I should approach this next in my life. I can have my own desires about it, but how can I be very clear about this is what you want me to do? And that's very, very important. Now, one of the other things I think that's incredibly important, and this is a big one, we talk about this a lot, is that when you're making transitions, don't burn bridges. That's a big one. Do you really?
We've seen it so many times, and it's so sad.
Oh, God.
It's really, really sad. You're like, well, I don't need this job anymore. Peace out. I'm out. Flame, torch the room, torch the building. Figuratively speaking, of course. But what ends up happening is like you never know who you're going to come across, who you need, what references you're going to need moving forward. People still got to check your references. They're going to go back to the places that you've been and have conversations with the people that you've just left. And so don't be so foolish that you burn those bridges, that people don't have positive things to say about you. And because you never know what the future holds, when you leave an institution, a place of business, whatever you're leaving, you want people to be able to say, feel free to come back if you ever choose to, right? Like the door is always open for you. You were such a great blah, blah, blah. Like when you leave, you want to leave on a high. You don't want to leave kicking rocks at people.
Departure darts.
Yeah.
I mean, like just throwing darts.
Biblical about that. Let's say even if it wasn't a place that was good to you, you are always able to learn something and glean and take something with you from that experience.
So true.
Some experiences you're going to learn how to operate, how to act, what you want to be like. But then there's other experiences where you walk away and you're learning what not to do, what you don't want to be like. And those are just as valuable. So no matter what, all these experiences are valuable. That's sort of the value in the valley. All these experiences are valuable. So recognizing that, respecting it for what it is, tipping your hat on the way out the door, being gracious about whatever the experience was, and moving on, because you just never know. I mean, I've been in situations where, you think you're leaving a group of people behind, and then you get to your next place of business or experience or what have you, and some of those people are also there. They just didn't tell you that they were also transitioning. So you have to be really careful and be very mindful.
I tell people all the time that I was having a conversation with some leaders several years ago, and this conversation came up. And I said, you know, you think about this: kings talk to kings. Make no mistake about it. I've had so many other leaders to call me and say, hey, so and so is applying or moved to this city.
Just because you don't put them down as a reference, if you name a
Man,
place of
they
business or if you name a
will.
city or an area of interest or whatever, or career field, they're going to call their friends in that field
They're
in
gonna
your
do it.
area
Oh,
that
they're
you
gonna do
just
it.
left
You can guarantee.
and have conversations whether you wrote those names down or not.
And
Yeah.
I've done on many occasions. So my mother told me, if you can't say nothing good about somebody,
Don't say
don't
anything
say.
at
And
all.
that was the
And that
message.
speaks volumes. So even if we don't say anything or the person doesn't say anything about you, the fact that they don't say anything positive about you speaks volumes. And so it's not always about someone bad talking you, but it's about them not having something positive to say. You have to be very, very careful and mindful of that as well.
Yeah, and so when you think about those first two things, pausing, and you think about like making certain that you leave right, you don't burn
Leave
bridges.
right.
But I think it's important. And one of the questions we often ask people is, what version of you will show up in the new space? What version of you do you want to show up in this new space? That means, what have I learned from the previous place, the previous situations I've experienced? What was I willing to shed and let go of? And how do I commit myself to making certain there's a positive transition? And what is the version of myself that's going to manifest this new place, this new thing, this new business, this new role, this whatever it is? What version? Is this a more measured person? Is this a more patient person? Is this a more mature person? Is this a more collaborative person? Maybe I was more individual. Maybe I did things, from a, micromanagement perspective over here. Maybe in life now, I want to be more collaborative. I've learned some things. And maybe I realized maybe this is more life balance person. Maybe over here, I was work, 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 work. And I was about to lose my family and my kids didn't know me. But now this new version is maybe I'm going to be more centered on my family. I'm going to have a better work-life balance. So you then get to determine what version of yourself will show up in that new space.
Based on your experiences
I
that
learned
you've
it.
had in your
I
previous
learned it.
season.
I learned it. I made transitions and I had to make that transition to move from the glorification of the grind
Yes.
to centralizing my core.
The
Let that
core
sink in.
for.
Move from glorifying the grind to centralizing your core. For me, it's my core four. This one and them two kids. And me, the core four. Whatever your core is your family. Right? And at the
Or
end
your
of the
core is you. Let's
it's
say if
you
you're single and you're
taking
still trying to
care of
figure things out or you're
you.
still moving through life. Like your core asset is you. How are you pouring into yourself? What are you doing to make yourself better? Are you taking classes? Are you taking courses?
Yes.
Are you eating right? Are you
Amen.
getting in your exercise? Are you getting in your proper sleep to build you up so that you can be the best version of you that you can possibly be? Because there were seasons where people just sort of grind till their bodies are falling apart, grind till they're mentally distressed, grind, 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 and then they're no good in this next season because they're burned out, right? So don't allow yourself to get to that part. Sometimes your core is you pouring back into you.
That's so true. That's so true. And so you have to make certain of that. And I think when you think about that version of yourself, I think that's where you really find peace in the transition. I think you find, a sense of wholeness in that because nobody wants to go into a transition fractured with trauma and broken, because nobody wants to see you coming, right? And I think too, one of the things that is incredibly important, I just throw this out and we could talk about it. I think that in this day of social media, you brought it up earlier, to not play the comparison game. In your transition, to be completely comfortable
And
in
locked
in
in
your own lane.
on you.
Yeah, in your own lane. This is what I'm called to do. I don't feel pressure. See, some people transition for the wrong purpose because
Mm-hmm.
everybody else is doing it, or because I
Mm-hmm.
see somebody, I'm trying to keep up with this person. But
Mm-hmm.
can you be comfortable in your own lane? Can
Mm-hmm.
you say, this is what I'm doing, and I don't need like a lot of affirmation around this? I know that this is what I'm called to do. And when you find that space, you become people like you did the
Or people transition or they recognize that it's a season of transition. And instead of getting still and waiting on God, they're surveying the land, figuring out what's hot, what's not, what social media is saying. And they jump the gun and they're like, well, I'm going to just do that. That's what's popular. That's what's popping. That's what I'm going to do. Everyone's talking about that. Let's do that. That's cool. That's not what your assignment was.
Yeah.
Your assignment was to get still and figure out what God is asking you to do in this season. Because what He has in store for you could possibly blow that completely out of the water. But while you are over here digging a ditch for yourself by holding on and trying to chase something that's not meant for you, you are completely missing the boat that God has in store for you. And so, again, just being super mindful
Yeah.
about almost in this season just being when you're in that season of transition, it's okay to just be a little tunnel vision
Yeah,
for a while.
it is. Yeah.
Tunnel vision meaning don't look left, don't look right, don't be worrying about what everybody else is doing around you. Figure out what God wants you to do and be laser sharp focused on moving forward in that situation, right? Taking care of yourself, taking care of your loved ones, taking care of the people and the responsibilities that you have, but really being laser sharp focused on not allowing these other things to distract you from moving in the direction that God wants you to go in.
All right, so finally, I want to set this up. She doesn't even know this question is coming, but I think her commentary will probably close this out better than anything I could say going
Well,
forward.
that's a lot of pressure.
No, I'm going to set it up right. All
Okay.
right, so tell me what transition was like for a young girl who determines at a young age that she's going to be a physician. She comes to Vanderbilt,
Mm-hmm.
even in the face of people telling her she can't go to medical school. She then excels with honors. She goes to Cornell Medical School. She goes to the #1 children's hospital in the United States, CHOP, for her residency, becomes a neonatologist, one of the few African American women who do this. She
Mm-hmm.
does her fellowship in California. Then she comes to do a master's of public health at Harvard. She's on faculty. She is like living the dream. She comes to Nashville. She works at Vanderbilt in the neonatal unit. She's saving lives every day. This is what she's dreamed to do. And then all of a sudden, at it starts happening in her late 30s, and then by 40, she's like, I'm ready to transition from the clinical side
practice.
of practicing,
Mm-hmm.
not medicine itself,
Mm-hmm.
but from going into the hospital
Yeah.
in the neonatal ward, the
Yeah.
thing that I literally trained all these years to do,
Yeah.
I'm ready to transition.
Yeah.
What was that like for you emotionally,
Yeah.
spiritually,
Yeah.
and the chatter you heard? Because in that career,
Yeah.
you know how it is. It's very competitive, dog eat dog.
Yeah.
And what are you doing now? Are you still working in the hospital? All this. How was that transition for you? And how can you help somebody
Well,
come
I
to that
mean,
place?
first it was feeling this tug. And I couldn't necessarily describe it except for I felt like there was a gap, there was a hole, and I was hungry and thirsty for more, even though I was working like 40-hour, 24-hour day shifts. I was basically doing double and triple time with the time that I had, but I needed more. I felt that God was pulling me to do something else, and I couldn't explain it per se until I got still, until I got quiet, until he showed me to look around and started pointing out certain things in terms of issues and things that were happening in the city, in terms of ways that I could really get involved and use my influence and build bridges and connectivity and bring resources to people and communities. And this was something that I never planned for. It wasn't something that I necessarily wanted to do from the jump, for sure not. It wasn't even anything that was in the cards or an option for me early on. But I knew God well enough to know when God speaks, you move. I tried to negotiate with God for sure because it's a scare. Like transitions are scary, especially when you don't know what they mean or know what they look like. But I would argue that this transition that you're describing that I went through happened over a course of years. It was like he was planting seeds, planting seeds, planting seeds, and I was getting the tug, getting the tug, getting the tug year after year after year. And I was still sort of negotiating, trying to figure out what this looks like, what this means, and making sure it was truly God's voice and not me just being tired or exhausted or, whatever. And yeah, I mean, I moved into the community realm of health and wellness, and it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made. And I feel strongly that, I mentioned it earlier, that God has a sense of humor. Had I put in the time, energy, and effort to become a doctor thinking that this is what I was going to do for the community, I don't think I would have worked that hard. I don't think I would have done it. I was doing and chasing this medical dream thinking that that was my purpose, but there was some internal drive, right? Being able to do those things and gain those skills and go to those great institutions and be up all night and study that hard. But what I later discovered in life was that God put that in me so that I can be the best that I could possibly be, so that he could, in the right season, turn around and shift those gifts from working inside four walls, right, in the hospital, to expand those gifts to be able to work in the community and for the kingdom of God. So that's really what all this was for, but I didn't know it. But had he told me when I was 17, 18 years old, studying, trying to get into medical school, when I was in my 20s, trying to get, into the best residency programs and the best fellowships in the country, that this is what my outcome would be, that I'd be marrying a pastor of a mega church and doing all this stuff, I would have freaked out. I wouldn't have done it. I didn't. When you're 17 or 18, you don't want to marry a pastor. You don't want that responsibility. You don't want to live in this fishbowl, right? You don't understand like the greatness that is upon you. So that's what I mean by God plants these small seeds and he shows you one step and then the next step and then the next step. And sometimes he allows you to do these things thinking that they're for something else, but it's really for him to get the glory and really for this amazing life and influence and impact that you're going to make. But sometimes you cannot handle the whole picture where you are. So getting comfortable with the unknown, getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, getting comfortable just hearing from God and taking one step, hearing from God again, taking the next step, hearing from God again, taking the next step, as opposed to feeling like he's got to tell you the whole picture. Like, had I had the whole picture, it wouldn't have never come to fruition. But me walking in faith, being still, being quiet, just really having a strong relationship with God and knowing and looking back on life and seeing how God had moved through my life and how he was always there every step of the way. When I reached that point and that fork in the road moment where Michelle Obama talks about in her book, Becoming, there's these moments where you have to make a decision to go left and go right. And those frequently are life transformative. Had I not gone to Harvard, because I didn't want to go back to school when I went to Harvard, that's where I met my husband. Then we moved to Nashville. Then I moved to Nashville, and that's when my life, completely transformed and exploded. And so all of those things, those were not necessarily in the cards for me in terms of my own mind or mindset. But when you are doing and walking in the purpose that God has in store for you, these transitions happen and being willing to walk with God. So my biggest thing is when you're in a transition, recognize that it ain't about you. God is doing this for a purpose much greater than yourself. What is that thing? And knowing that God has his hands all over this, allow him to guide you and lead you, because whatever this thing is, if you're feeling that itch, whatever is next is going to blow your mind. But you have to be courageous enough to step out on faith and know that God's got you covered.
Woo! I told you.
Sorry for my soliloquy, but yeah, I'm so passionate about this.
37,
yeah.
23.
Yeah.
Steps of a good man
are
ordered by the Lord. Don't
Absolutely.
move until you get your orders.
Yes.
I'm Bishop.
And I'm Dr. Steph.
Be blessed.